Hello, everyone, and welcome to this series called Docker Essentials Part 2. In the last video, we saw what are containers and what Docker is used for and why we need to use Docker. So, in this part 2 of this series, we're going to be understanding images and Dockerfile. Both of these are very important concepts inside Docker, so let's have a look at them. First, let's have an understanding on what is an image. An image is essentially a standalone executable file that is used to create a container. So, as we're aware, a container contains all of the dependencies, the the binary files, the libraries, configuration, everything that's required to execute our code. And inside a container, first we need to build an image. An image essentially has all of these files packaged, and the container is built on top of this image. So there are certain important concepts regarding images that we'll go over now. The first one is that images are immutable. So when we say immutable, it means you cannot modify them. After an image is built or created, they cannot be modified. You can only make changes on top of it, or you can create new images. The second important concept in terms of images is that the container images are composed of layers. So each layer represents a certain set of file systems that we add onto that image to build our application. So let's say we have a server that we add into our image, then we add the application layer, the presentation layer, network layer, and so on. So we can keep adding images or layers onto our images in order to build our final container. Now, with that being said, let's understand what a Docker file is and how it plays into creating an image. Now, a Docker file is essentially just a text file which has the name Dockerfile, and it contains all of the instructions required to build out a container image. So, if we want to say it in a very simple manner, a Docker file contains all of the build instructions on what needs to be installed in that image. So, if we need to install Python, if we need to install a web server like Apache or Nginx, we need to install a database. This Docker file will contain all of the dependencies listed out, all of the commands, all of the configuration, the environment variables, so that we can simply execute one command to create that image. Now, as you can see here in this image or diagram, we have a Docker file which contains the list of instructions. We essentially build this Docker file into a Docker image, and we can use the Docker run command to create a container from the image. So this is essentially the process on how it works. Now here I have attached a sample Docker file for you. So here we can see that the first line we're using from Python 3.10 Slim. What this essentially means is that we need to have a base image. We build our images, as I had mentioned, layer by layer. So this will be the first layer, which is called all this the base image, from on top of which we build our actual image. So here we're going to use the Python as our base image, and we have a certain set of commands that we can use in our Docker file to uh, intimate Docker on how to build our image. So we have the work there command, the copy command, run, this cmd command. Don't worry about all of these commands right now, because I'll be going over all of these in a detail in a later part where we do a much more hands-on on how to actually build a Docker file, run it, and you know create an image and a container from it. So this is just how a sample Docker file will look like, a typical Docker file looks like. And as I had mentioned before, we have a layered architecture here. So each command that you see on a Docker file, uh, essentially what happens in the background is that a new image is created for each command, and that image is added on as a layer into the new image. So you can see that the base layer, let's say we have from CentOS 7, so this will be our base layer. If we want to install any other dependencies, like let's say a yum install wget, so that gets added on as a layer. And at the end, you can see that an image has all of these commands that we install are read only, and the container which is built on top of this image will be a read and write. Because we have our applications running on our container, the container needs to be able to write data. So that is why the only layer that is read and write is our container layer. Okay, so I've opened up a PowerShell instance here. I just want to showcase some on how easy it is to build an image. This will be a very simple example. I'll be going over all of this in much more detail in the upcoming videos. So you can interact with Docker using the command line or the Docker desktop. So first I'll just show you it in command line. So to get started, we can list out all of the images we have by just typing out docker image ls. Now you can see here, these are basically the images that I have. They all have an id associated with them, how big they are in terms of their size and so on. And if I want to check any active containers, I can type in docker container ls. And right now I don't have any active containers. Now let's say you just want to quickly just set up an ubuntu system. You just want to do some experimentations on it, test out some like development stuff on it, so on. Now we'll just see how easy it is to just create an ubuntu instance. As you can see from a previous command in a docker image ls, we already have an ubuntu image. So if I just type in here docker run hyphen itd, this uh, I'll be going over what this means in a later video. And we just need to give our image name. So here I'm just going to type in ubuntu, sorry, ubuntu, and hit enter and done. So now we are given an id. This will be the containers id. So now if I give docker container ls, you can see that a container has been created with our ubuntu image. And to get a view of this better, we'll go over to the GUI. Okay, so we've opened up the Docker desktop GUI here, and as you can see, we have a container here. This is the container that we just now created with our Ubuntu image, and we have a bunch of options here. So we can view the details for this particular container. The logs will be appearing here. We can inspect it. So the inspect will basically show us all of the details, like the volumes, the networking it has, all of the IP addresses associated with it, and so on. And if there are any volumes mounted onto this. So for now, we can even just open up a terminal here. So we go to execution. So this terminal right now is inside our Ubuntu instance. I'm going to type in ls to list out the directories, and you can see here we're as of now inside an Ubuntu machine. So you can understand from this how easy it is to just create an instance. We were able to create an ubuntu system within a second with just a single command. And if we need more complex requirements on top of ubuntu, we need to install php, we need to install python, we need to install mysql, mongodb, whatever it is. That is where a docker file comes into picture. Finally, let's have a look at what is docker hub here. Docker Hub essentially provides a huge library of pre-built images and resources. So you don't have to build all of your images from scratch. There is a huge open source community that is, constantly building out new images on any kind of tech stack. So let me open up Docker Hub right now. Okay, so we have opened up Hub, and this is how it looks like. Here you can see that if you scroll down, you have images for almost all categories. Let's say you want to get started with a new machine learning model, you can simply just use this. You can instead of having to build your own image. If you want to use MySQL, it's already there. So let me just open up this MySQL image, and you can see it has a quick documentation. You can use this docker pull mysql to pull it into your local repository, and you can see all of the supported versions that you can use of mysql. And below, if you scroll down, you can see how you can execute your own MySQL container as well. So this is just an understanding of Docker Hub. I would highly suggest you go over this and see if there are any new tech stacks that you can use. You can easily just like pull up images and get started with it. So that's it for this video. In the next video, I'll be doing a more hands-on approach. I'll be going over, we'll be creating a new container. We'll be using like Dockerfile to do it. We'll understand how to create a working application using Docker. If you like this video, like and subscribe. And thank you so much, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.